My name is Ethan Walsh. I'm 29 years old, and 3 weeks ago, my son-in-law, my wife's husband, the man who married into my family, stood in my own driveway and told me I wasn't allowed on the family trip. He said it like he was reading off a clipboard. You're not going. You're a guest in this family, Ethan. Not blood. I smiled. I nodded. I said, okay. Then I went inside, sat down at my laptop, and sent one email. 2 sentences. Nobody saw me do it. The next morning, the family lawyer called my mother-in-law before she'd even finished her coffee. By noon, the property management company that ran the family cabin, the one everyone assumed belonged to my wife's parents, had frozen every account tied to it. My son-in-law, that's what he liked calling himself, even though I was the one who married in, found out at exactly 2:14 p.m. I know the time because I was the one who scheduled the notice to go out then. He turned pale. My mother-in-law, who had already started bragging to her sister about the trip, called me screaming, before I tell you what happened next, please hit like and subscribe. Drop your city and local time below. I love knowing where you're listening from. Now let me take you back 9 years, to the summer my grandfather sat me down on his porch and said something I didn't understand until 3 weeks ago. The porch smelled like cedar and cut grass. My grandfather's hands always smelled like motor oil and pipe tobacco, even on the days he hadn't touched either one, like the smell had just decided to live in his skin. I was 20 years old that summer, broke, a little lost, staying at his lake house because I didn't know where else to go. He never asked me to explain myself. He just made rooms that I remember the sound of the screen door, that specific creak, twice, like it had a stutter, every time he went in for more iced tea. I remember the wood of that porch railing, soft and silver grey, worn down by 40 years of hands resting on it the way his was resting now. He didn't talk much. But one evening, watching the lake go orange, he said, Ethan, people will tell you what you're worth there. Whole lives. Most of them are wrong. The ones who matter never have to say it out loud. I didn't understand that then. I was 20. I thought it was just something old men say. My grandfather had built a modest fortune the boring way, buying a little land here, a little there, never bragging about it. Most of the family thought he was comfortable, not wealthy. They were wrong. He kept things quiet on purpose. My in-laws, my wife's family, were the opposite kind of quiet. Theirs was the silence of people who were always calculating. I noticed it before I had a word for it. The way my mother-in-law would ask my grandfather, almost casually, over dinner, so when the lake house eventually changes hands, and let the sentence hang there, like she was just being practical, my grandfather would just pour more tea. He never answered those questions. Not once. The lake house had a particular meal that meant something. Sunday mornings, him making eggs in the same cast iron pan his father had used, the handle wrapped in electrical tape because the wood grip had cracked decades ago and he refused to replace it. Some things you just keep using, he told me once. Doesn't matter if they're not pretty anymore. I think he was talking about more than the pan. I married into a family that smiled a lot at gatherings and counted everything quietly underneath the smiling. I didn't see it clearly. Back then. I just felt it. The way you feel a draft in a house before you find the open window. I had no power in that family. I was the husband who'd married in, the one without the last name, the one who got introduced as Ethan, our son-in-law, instead of just Ethan. I didn't know yet that my grandfather had already seen all of it. I didn't know he'd already done something about it. My grandfather got sick the spring after that summer. Slow at first, tired in a way that wasn't like him, and then not slow at all. I drove up every weekend I could. The lake house started to feel different. Quieter in a worse way. The cast iron pan sat unused in the drying rack for the first time in my memory. My in-laws' reaction taught me something I never forgot. They didn't grieve out loud. They organized. I heard my mother-in-law on the phone with her sister, using words like asset transition and the property going forward. She was talking about a dying man's house while he could still hear footsteps on the stairs. One night I came downstairs for water and heard her talking to my son-in-law, her son. The man my sister-in-law had married, the one who acted like family royalty because his name had been on the lake house insurance paperwork for 2 years. They were in the kitchen. They didn't know I was on the stairs. Once he's gone, she was saying, it's a clean transfer. We just need Ethan to stay agreeable. Until then. Agreeable. That's the word they used for me. Not family. Not Ethan. Agreeable. Something you manage, not someone you love. That's the word they use for everything that used to be love. I went back up the stairs without making a sound. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't cry that night, not yet. I just lay there in the dark, turning the word over and over. Agreeable. I started doing small things after that. I kept the cast iron pan oiled, even when no one was cooking. I kept the porch swept. I paid the electric bill 1 month when nobody noticed the account had lapsed, just so the lights would stay on for him. Small, invisible things. Things that meant nothing to anyone watching, and everything to me. I realized something in those weeks. To my in-laws, I was furniture. Useful, occasionally repositioned, never consulted, so I decided to let them keep thinking that. If I was invisible, I would be invisible on purpose. I would watch. I would wait. I didn't know yet what I was waiting for. I just knew I wasn't going to be agreeable anymore. Not really. Just convincingly. My grandfather died on a Tuesday in October. Quietly, the way he did most things. 3 days later, a woman named Patricia Hale called me. Not my mother-in-law. Me. Mr. Reyes, she said, I'm your grandfather's estate attorney. He asked me to contact you directly, and only you, the week before he passed. I sat down on the porch step where he used to sit. The wood was cold under me, October cold, the kind of cold that gets into your hands fast. Patricia explained it slowly, in plain language. 9 years ago, the same summer he told me about people and their worth, my grandfather had moved the lake house, along with a sizable trust, into a structure that named me as sole trustee and primary beneficiary. Not my wife. Not her parents. Me. He told me, Patricia said, that everyone else in the family already knew what they wanted from him. You were the only one who never asked for anything. I sat with that for a long moment. Slow down. My in-laws had spent 2 years quietly assuming control, the insurance paperwork, the property management calls, the casual dinner conversations about when it changes hands. All of it built on a guess. A guess about a will that didn't exist the way they thought it did. Patricia told me something else. My grandfather had updated the documents 3 more times over the years, each time after he noticed something. A comment my mother-in-law made about the dock needing repair before resale. A conversation my son-in-law had with a real estate agent, just casually exploring numbers, 2 years before my grandfather had even gotten sick. He'd seen it all. And every time, quietly, without telling anyone, he'd made the locks a little tighter. Have you ever had to stay silent to protect yourself even when every part of you wanted to speak up? Tell me in the comments. I read them. I didn't tell my wife's family any of this. Not yet. I let them keep planning their asset transition. I let my mother-in-law keep referring to the lake house as ours at dinner. I let my son-in-law keep calling himself family royalty. 2 nights after Patricia's call, I overheard him on the phone with a contractor, getting quotes to renovate the dock, quotes for a property he didn't legally have 1 square foot of claim to. He gave a date. He gave a budget. He sounded so sure of himself. I texted Patricia 2 words, I'm ready. That night, I lay in bed listening to my in-laws, house go quiet, 1 light at a time, everyone drifting off thinking they'd already won something. They had no idea what they were sleeping on top of. It was almost anticlimactic, hearing it laid out so plainly. No courtroom. No dramatic reveal. Just paperwork that had been quietly true for 9 years, waiting for me to pick it up. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, because this story is about to turn. My mother-in-law tried one last thing. She invited me to lunch, just the 2 of us, which had never happened before in 6 years of marriage. She talked about how much family meant to her. She mentioned, almost gently, that maybe it was time to formalize who's managing the lake house going forward, as a family. She suggested my name be added, like it wasn't already the only name that mattered. I said, I'll think about it. I didn't tip my hand. Not a flicker. My wife's younger brother, Marcus, 19, still mostly outside the family's quiet calculations, noticed something was off with me that week. He found me on the porch one evening and just sat down next to me without saying anything for a while. Then, you've been weird lately. Good weird or bad weird? I told him, I don't know yet. Maybe both. I drove up to the lake house alone the weekend before the trip. I sat on the same step, the same cold wood, and I let myself feel it, all of it, for the first time since the funeral. I wish this were different. I wish my mother-in-law had been the kind of family who would have grieved my grandfather instead of measuring him. I wish my son-in-law had earned a single thing he assumed he was owed. But wishes don't hold up. What I have does. I cried on that step. Not from weakness. From clarity, the kind that arrives all at once, like a window finally opening after years of being painted shut. It was 11:50 p.m. the night before the trip when I opened my laptop. Patricia was on a video call, in her office somewhere, even at that hour. Last step, she said. Once you sign, the property management transfer notice goes out automatically tomorrow morning. There's no walking it back after this. Are you certain? I thought about the cast iron pan with the tape handle. I thought about the porch swings creak, twice, like a stutter. I thought about a man who never once told me what I was worth, because he'd already decided to show me instead. I'm certain, I said. I signed. The screen confirmed it in plain, unceremonious text. Trusteeship accepted. Patricia smiled, just slightly, the way professionals do when they allowed one small human moment. Your grandfather would be proud of how long you waited, she said. Most people would have used this the day they got it. The clock on my laptop read 12:03 a.m. I am 29. I am, as of 3 minutes ago, the legal owner of the only home that ever told me the truth. Across town, in my mother-in-law's house, the lights were still on. My son-in-law was up late finalizing the family group chat for the trip, assigning bedrooms at the lake house, joking about who'd get the good dock chairs. He'd already decided which room would be his. He'll find out otherwise in about 9 hours. The morning of the trip, everyone gathered at my in-laws' house before driving up together, except me. I'd told my wife the night before. He'll find out otherwise in about 9 hours. The morning of the trip, everyone gathered at my in-laws' house before driving up together, except me. I'd told my wife the night before, gently, that I had something to handle and would meet them there. My son-in-law pulled me aside in the driveway before anyone left, the same driveway, like he wanted symmetry. Look, Ethan, he said. No hard feelings about what I said before. You can still come. Family's family, right? I said, thanks. I'll think about it. He looked at me like I was still the person he thought I was. I wasn't. I hadn't been for 3 weeks. Jewel, his phone rang at 9:40 a.m., just as they were loading the cars. I watched his face change in real time, confusion, then a kind of pale stillness, as the property manager explained that all access codes, all account authority, and all future bookings for the family cabin now routed through a new trustee. Effective the day before, my mother-in-law grabbed the phone from him. I heard her say my name, once, like a question. Then she looked across the driveway at me. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile the way he'd smiled when he told me I wasn't going. I just stood there, calm, the way my grandfather used to stand on that porch, like nothing needed to be proven, because it already had been. I think, I said, I'll actually pass on the trip this year. But you're welcome to use the cabin, once you ask me. My grandfather used to say that the people who matter never have to tell you what you're worth out loud. I always thought he meant something simple. Be patient, be humble, don't brag. He meant something deeper. He meant, don't waste your breath proving your worth to people who've already decided not to see it. Let your life prove it instead, quietly, the way he lived his. My son-in-law still hasn't asked to use the cabin. I don't think he will. My mother-in-law sends polite, careful texts now, the kind people send when they're recalculating who actually holds the power in a room. My son-in-law still hasn't asked to use the cabin. I don't think he will. My mother-in-law sends polite, careful texts now, the kind people send when they're recalculating who actually holds the power in a room. Patricia still manages the trust. She tells me, every now and then, that my grandfather left a note in his file, dated the week before he died. Tell Ethan to take his time. He always does. As for me, I still have the lake house. I still use the cast iron pan, handle wrapped in electrical tape. Every Sunday morning I can get up there. The porch step is still cold in October. The screen door still stutters, twice, every time. I think about my grandfather every time I make those eggs, and I think, some inheritances aren't about money. They're about someone finally telling you, in their own quiet way, that you were never agreeable. You were just patient. If you've ever had to stay quiet while people underestimated you, if you've ever had a moment where the truth finally caught up to everyone but you, I want to hear your story. Tell me in the comments, and if this story moved you, subscribe. There are more to come.